My turn.
So we start here on Ayin Beis, Amud Aleph, the Mishnah of HaBah BiMachteres. We're really entering into a new sugya. We started it, just touched it last week, but now we really have to get into it. Now this sugya, HaBah BiMachteres, has a number of different dimensions to it. One dimension is the halacha of a rodef, and the question is whether HaBah BiMachteres is a rodef and under what circumstances. Then we have another issue about whether the HaBah BiMachteres, if let's say he steals, which he's a burglar, that's what he wants to do, and the question is, does he have to repay the owner? And believe it or not, at least according to Rav, he doesn't have to pay for that. It's like a carte blanche. He's got a free for all. Take whatever he can, and he doesn't even have to return it according to halacha.
There's a tumid problem.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that because it has to do with the kinyan gzeva, kinyan knei. Anyway, let's read the Mishnah. HaBah BiMachteres nidon al shem sofa. We begin to understand why this Mishnah has been placed here right after the sugya ben Soromora, because ben Soromora is nidon al shem sofa. And so too, HaBah BiMachteres is nidon al shem sofa. It's right now he didn't kill anybody, but if we leave things alone as is, he may actually kill the balabayis. But that all depends upon whether the balabayis will take a stand and defend his own property. And at that moment in time, we'll see that the HaBah BiMachteres becomes a rodef. He's actually threatening the life of the balabayis. If the HaBah BiMachteres breaks kelim, so he should be chayav, and he would be paying compensation as Adam HaMazik. However, the halacha is yesh lo damin, and we don't know exactly what that case is. The Gemara is going to discuss it, but there's a certain case of yesh lo damin, there's a certain case of ein lo damin. And the exception to the rule, which is very rare, is called yesh lo damin. And the Gemara is going to talk about a father and a son relationship where the father actually so desperate, it's hard to believe, your hairs can stand on end when you think about it, but the man's father actually broke into his son's house. And that's going to be considered a case of yesh lo damin, which means the Torah is not going to allow the son to kill his own father. And don't jump to any conclusions, because as strange as it sounds, it's the reverse situation, and a son comes as a burglar breaking into his father's house, then the father's allowed to kill him, and that comes up the next part of the Mishnah, which is called him ein lo damin.
A son will kill a father, and a father will never.
Right. We'll see about that. So that's called imzar chalav hashemesh. You familiar with that?
Yeah.
Rashi quotes a lot of it in Chumash. In any event, so in ein lo damin, because the Ganav is now liable for death. Now, again, when I use the word liable, I'm not sure if that's the proper word, but at least it means ein lo damin, that if the balabais kills him, and we'll see about somebody else, another spectator, but at least in the case of the balabais, if he kills this HaBah BiMachteres, then he's part. And the reason for that is because the HaBah BiMachteres is considered a rodef. And once he's considered a rodef, then ein lo damin. Ein lo damin means he's kind of like a gavra ketila, like we discussed way back when. And now the Ganav, the HaBah BiMachteres, because he broke into someone's house, and at that moment in time he has the status of a rodef, therefore he's patur, meaning he doesn't pay damages. Now, it's one thing to say that he's patur and he doesn't pay damages. That might depend upon a very famous and fundamental hakira about whether tashlumei nezikin are onshim or they are simply like a chiyuv moment. When I have to pay you for a ma'aseh hezek because I destroyed your objects, am I simply returning that which is yours, or am I being punished, and as a result of punishment, I have to pay you compensation? But let's leave that on the side. The real chiddush here, would be in a case where he didn't break the kelim, but he's holding on to the kelim, meaning the BiMachteres, instead of breaking the kelim and being chayav for tashlumin b'toras mazik, and that's called tashlumin, instead he dragged out the kelim of the balabayas. Maybe he took a packet full of diamonds and he took it to his hiding place, wherever his house. And it could possibly be that in such a case, he doesn't have to return the object that is be'en. And that's going to be the sheet of Rav here. We're going to have a hard time racking our brains and trying to figure that out. The Torah says, "V'heshiv zagzela shar gazal." The nignav has rights to get back his property. Okay, if the property was destroyed, that's one thing. And then you have to know whether there's a chiyuv mammon, and you could say perhaps a rodef doesn't incur a chiyuv mammon insofar as he's chayiv misa. But that doesn't even cut, that doesn't even get off the ground when you're talking about v'heshiv like zela, if the zela is be'en. So as I say before, we really have to hold on to our seats here to explain Rav. Rav was from the Gedolei Amoraim. I think in Yerushalmi he's called a Tana even. But whatever he is, he's a big gun over here. Now, Rava is going to say something which is a lot more acceptable. And now, again, it's also a challenge, but Rava is going to explain why is BiMachteres granted the wonderful status of a rodef. After all, he's a burglar. And what motivates a burglar as opposed to a murderer? The money. He wants to take possessions. But Omar Rava, my time in the BiMachteres, why do you classify and define a BiMachteres as elo damim, meaning as a rodef? And the answer of Rava is chazaka ein adam mamid atzmo al mamona. Now, the word chazaka here does not mean what it means in, let's say, the beginning of Masechet Nida, when the Gemara says that if a person jumps into a mikveh, he dips himself in a mikveh and he's tameh, and we don't know if the mikveh is chaser or mole, so al ukmi gavra cheskaseh. Or you have a case of a woman who has a cheskas besula, and now we find it to be a ba'ula. We don't know if it was taftov or lav taftov. You have many cases where chazaka just tells you don't change the status quo. But that's not what chazaka is here. Chazaka means that you can bet your bottom dollar. Chazaka means that there's an umdana, and we're going to see this in the Ran. I don't know, did anybody get a chance to? I put it online there. No? Anyway, maybe you can check it out now and open up in your phones. So what does it mean? Sometimes chazaka is a psychological umdana, what we would call a davar barur, which means that based on the understanding of human nature, we can predict the future. We can predict human behavior. All of psychology, as you know, is built on that. Is anybody here who studied psychology and is willing to admit it? No? When I went to college, they used to tell me the most dangerous discipline to study for a Fruma Yid is philosophy. Does that sound familiar to anybody? No? Like, for example, I majored in philosophy. I took Nietzsche. Did you ever hear of Nietzsche? That's pure apikoursis from beginning to end.
More than Kant?
What did you say?
More than Kant?
No, Kant is great. The categorical. Kant is one of the most pure theorists in what we call moral philosophy. But start studying Spinoza, and things like that. You're really in trouble. But in any event, what I would like to suggest, and maybe here in the Gush I'll get in trouble for this, that the most dangerous discipline for a religious Jew is psychology. Because the philosophy of psychology is pretty much based, except for Eric Fromm and his group, on human behavior's predictability, meaning we're going to take the scientific rule of causality, of cause and effect, and apply it to human behavior. That's pure apikoursis. But the trouble with that apikoursis is that it only seeps in very slowly over the course of 4 years of majoring in psychology. But in any event, chazaka here means psychology. It means that we can predict human behavior. if a man keeps a shotgun up in his living room, up in his bedroom, he means it for real. If somebody, breaks into his house, he's going to take the shotgun and he's going to, go down the steps and he's going to confront the burglar, even if it means a face-to-face duel. He's not going to let all his possessions just be taken away and sit there idly and passively like a temple. And that's called chazaka ein adam mamid atzmo al mamono. He doesn't stand idly and wait until this BiMachteres clears out his whole house of anything that's valuable.
I mean, unless he thinks that his life could be in danger also. If he knows that
that's right. You're right, Eli. You're 100% right. I would challenge this guy to, if you would ask me, again, I may sound like a coward here, but I would say just turn over in bed and make believe nothing's going on here. You don't want to put your life on the line.
Okay.
Go down, check it out.
Yeah, go down.
In
Check it out.
Texas, a loaded 45 is called 911. So
I mean, I have a friend of mine. I mean, he just passed away recently, and his mother was murdered in South Africa. What the burglars came in and they just put a gag on her mouth, and she died. She died of lack of oxygen. I mean, these brutal, they're animals. They don't care about human life. But here we're saying something else. We're saying that the person who owns the house and he's being victimized, he's the victim of the burglary, he's going to defend and protect his possessions. And that's called a chazaka. That's a given.
So
we'll see in the Ran.
Is that like a ruba de lexicon?
Yeah, I would say it's similar to a rove. It's similar to a rove.
The lexicon. Like, this is the way people, majority
it's
of people.
almost like, you remember we discussed here that rove, nashim, will give birth after 9 months as opposed to 7 months. Anybody remember that? When we were calculating the time period for a Ben Sora Mora, because he's got to be royal Leos each, whatever we discussed over there, I hope you remember it. And if you don't, it's time to review it. But now we're preparing for Pesach, who has time? But in any event, so that's what goes on here.
It has to be BiMachteres though.
Oh,
If you
now,
live in a shop,
why does the
you-
fact that this Baal Habayis is going to defend his property, why does that make the BiMachteres, the burglar, into a rodent?
Because he anticipates that.
Excellent. V'hai, and this Gana, before he does his burglary, he makes the following calculation. Meimar Amr, he knows in his mind that he has Zilna. If I go ahead and burglarize this guy, then he is the owner of the house, is going to face me. He's going to encounter me. Veloshamically, he's not going to let he's not going to just give me a carte blanche. Here's the key. Go ahead and steal my Van Gogh painting. You know what I'm saying? But if he stands against me, what am I going to do? I have two choices. I can either run away and give up on the burglary, or I can come prepared, come armed, and destroy him. And that's exactly what he's going to do. Katil nolei. Katil nolei means I am going to kill him. So imagine, we have a real serious duel here, a confrontation, because the Baal Habayis is going to get his shotgun, and he's willing to face the BiMachteres until death do us part. And either I'll kill you or you'll kill me, and I'm going to kill you. And the burglar knows that up front. So he therefore is prepared and armed to kill the BiMachteres. Well, if he's prepared to do so, then he becomes a rodev. And if he becomes a rodev, the Torah establishes that you have a right to take the initiative and kill the person who's on his way to kill you. Again, what happens in our Mishnah? If we go back to our Mishnah, did this confrontation actually take place? It would seem offhand that it didn't take place, because the Mishnah is saying that Nidon al Shem Sofo, meaning we're only anticipating what might happen. And then we go on in the Sefer to talk about a case of Shiber Esachovis, and now the Baal Habayis is suing the BiMachteres for damages for breaking his kalim. It seems like he got out alive. Everybody got out alive here. But it doesn't matter. Why? Because the Mishnah wants to establish this breakthrough principle that the BiMachteres is a rodef. And the dinim of a rodef will now apply to the BiMachteres. And Rav is giving us the logical background for this conclusion. And that is that there's a chazaka ein adam ma'amides atzmo mamono. And number two, the BiMachteres knows this, anticipates this, takes this into consideration when he breaks into someone else's house, and therefore he prepares himself for a confrontation with the Baal Bayis in which he's going to kill the Baal Bayis. It's your sword against my sword. And why? Because I have to steal whatever I have to steal. So this was all planned out, and we can already anticipate from the beginning that this BiMachteres is armed and ready to kill the Baal Bayis. And now we'll look at the Ran. Can you find the Ran on your telephone? Is that feasible?
Yeah,
In the WhatsApp group? Yeah, how do you find it on the WhatsApp group? Yeah, but you have to know the name of the group, I think. No? If you write Burzon, I don't think it'll show up. I once wrote AS, and I thought it would show up. It didn't show up.
Said Rabbi Burzon.
Oh, very good.
Name of the group.
Excellent. I like that name. Again, I would have written Azaria maybe, but okay. You want to be more formal.
What's the language?
Do you ever call someone a rabbi and he says to you, I'm not a rabbi. Don't call me rabbi. Just happened to me yesterday. All right.
Yeah, Rama.
So the Ran, I don't know about the Yad Rama, I didn't see, I have to be honest with you. I'm talking about the Ran, which I tried to send to you on the WhatsApp group. Maybe I didn't do a good job.
We did 6:15 tonight.
Wow, you even know what time. This is like Adam Zomer. He knows exactly where I was at what time. I can't claim I wasn't there. So he says the following: Zel Shono. You have that Zayin Lam Zel Shono. Vadai, I have to admit, says the Ran, she'ein kol haganovim boim al iskei nefashos. Okay, there's a nice chazaka here that the burglar, the BiMachteres, probably what?
Now I have to find the line again.
He changed the name of the group. The name of the group was changed to Rabbi Azaria Burzon.
Oh, okay.
I thought Shane called
I can tolerate that.
Okay.
So, in other words, are we saying that in 100% of the cases, the Ganav is ready to kill the Baal Bayis and he comes in armed, ready? He's been taking, lessons out there in the Mitvach, and he shoots, he gets 9 out of 10 on the, like when I did my basic training, I hit 3 out of 10, but don't tell anybody. Anyway, so this BiMachteres is ready and eager to kill him. Is that true? No. He says, Vade ain't kol haganovim boim al iskei nefashos. So we're talking about a kind of chazaka that has exceptions. It's rov, it's a chazaka, but don't assume that it's 100%. The Baal Bayis who omed kenegdo al manas larod im lo yaniach lo asakel miyad. He says that on the one hand, if the Baal Bayis is not going to allow the Ganav to steal anything because he's going to stand up for his goods, his property, then and if he realizes the BiMachteres that the Baal Bayis is going to protect it, even if it means he's going to go out and kill him, then lo yaniach lo asakel miyad. It could be that at that point the Ganav he'll make a decision. It's not worth it for him to have a face-to-face duel to die, with the Baal Bayis. And therefore, maybe, Yaniach lo asakel, maybe he's going to drop everything that's in his hand as soon as he realizes the Baal Bayis is coming down the steps with a shotgun, and he's going to run for his life, drop everything. He says, the Ran says, you know what? I would have said that, you can't kill the BiMachteres when we don't know exactly for sure what the maybe we should say, Suffolk the Fashis Lahakel, let's be very liberal and protect the interest of the BiMachteres, and let's be Danim L'Kavschus, that in event that the Baal Bayis will stand up against him, he's going to run away and drop everything. But Chazaka ain't on the Mamid Atzma Mamono. However, the answer to this question is the Ran never actually formulates the question as such, but it's an implicit question because he's saying, don't tell me that every single Ganav is going to go so far that when the Balabayas confronts him with a gun, he's going to go ahead and kill the Balabayas. No. That's not so. But, says the Ran, if you're asking about most cases, if you're asking me what human behavior could be predicted, Chazaka, ain't no mamish. V'Ganav Yodea. And as we said in our understanding of the Rava, the Ganav knows this up front. He calculates this. So he already knows up front, going into the burglary, that in all likelihood, the Balabayas is going to stand up against him. And therefore, he is willing to stand up against the Balabayas and kill the Balabayas if need be. Okay, now there's another phrase here in the Ran, you may see it, which I think is going to be a little bit complicated, for me at least. He has this whole theory here about, who started this battle here, meaning from if you stand as a spectator from a distance, what you're looking at is a duel between two people. So who's the Rodef and who's the Nirdaf? Because at this point, you could argue ostensibly that Balbais becomes the Rodef and he's trying to kill the BiMachteres. So the Ran comes up with a very sophisticated theory that who Hischil b'Meriva, meaning we know for sure that it's the BiMachteres who's the initial instigator here, right? And therefore, his status is that of Bola Hargo, Hashkem Lahargo, and Asoa Kosev Rodev, and Ein Lo Dam. So let me just summarize what I wanted to suggest based on the Ran in one sentence. The Ran understands the words of Rava, quote, Chazaka Eino D'Mamid Atzma Mamono, as a psychological prediction of human behavior. I have a problem. If the whole story here is simply a matter of predicting human behavior, then I don't understand a Gemara here on Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis. Now, this sugya on Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis can be broken up into many, many different parts. And I want to focus on one particular dimension of this Gemara on Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis. The Gemara says, I think you'll count down about 6 or 7 lines from the top, because the first sugya on Amid Beis is about the father coming to the son, breaking into the son, or vice versa, and the halacha called Ein lo damim, yesh lo damim, zarcha lav hashemesh, lo zarcha lav hashemesh. But I want to focus on Tana Rabbanan. Can you see that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines down from the top?
Okay.
Yes? No? Maybe? Okay. 6 lines down from the top on Daf Azaria Berzim, Amid Beis. Okay. So what does it say over there? Tana Rabbanan. And it says the following, Damim lo, which means that the Bryce is going to tell us that sometimes it says Damim in plural, and sometimes it says Vidam ein lo. And this Bryce wants to darshan the extra 2 letters of Yud Mem, in other words, the Lashon Rabbi. What do we derive from Damim? As if to say there's a ribui that we can kill the Rodef. I'm sorry, the BiMachteres, I should say. And it says the following. Do you see it? Bein bechol u bein b'Shabbos. This is nuts, if you pardon the expression. This is crazy. A man breaks into my house on Shabbos. He's a BiMachteres. Rava has just established in interpreting the Mishnah that we have every right to assume that he's an armed robber who's going to put the life of the Baal Bayis into danger. He's going to kill him if need be. But today is Shabbos. So I need a ribui and a pasuk to tell me that the law of BiMachteres applies on Shabbos? Is there some nuance of a difference in the psychology of Adam, Ein Adam Mamid Atzmo Mamono, which is the whole thrust, the whole basis that underlies this Mishnah and the status of BiMachteres the Rodeh? Is there any nuance of a reason why that Ein Adam Mamid Atzmo Mamono should not apply on Shabbos? Do you follow what I mean? It should not apply on Shabbos. What? He's in the state of Shabbos Menucha. He's taking a Shlufstunde, right? So because he's resting on Shabbos, he's not going to bother waking up and confronting the BiMachteres to save his property. I find that very difficult. You know, when there's a ribui and a pasuk, I don't have to tell you this. I'm talking to myself. There's got to be a serious HaBah meaning. You know, the Torah doesn't just add words superficially. The Brisa doesn't dash in those extra words just for the sake of fun. There's got to be a serious HaBah meaning. That on Shabbos, the law of BiMachteres should be suspended, and for that I need an extra ribui in the pasuk to dash and no. Damim afilu b'Shabbos. What is going on over here? Is anybody following me, or am I?
Yeah.
You know, it's very hard for me to project my voice all the way to the back. Yeah. Yes. You do hear me. All right. I try to raise my voice. I wish, you know, as I've said about 1,000,000 times so far, you know, it'd be nice if we were a little bit closer. But anyway, that's the reality. I don't buy it. What would be the Havmin without the ribui?
What would I have said?
I would have said there's no din of BiMachteres on
What
Shabbos.
does it mean that the Baal Bayis can't what? The Baal Bayis can't kill.
Oh, wait a second. Maybe you're ahead of me. I don't know what you mean by can't. I was assuming that the Baal Bayis, again, everything's based on predictability, correct? On prediction. So again, Ellie, you may be onto something hot over here because I want to suggest a different shot in this sugya, but I'm bound now to the Ran. The Ran is describing the scenario in psychological terms, and it just evades me, it eludes me to understand that the psychology of protecting one's own property would change and be altered on Shabbos. You know, maybe as an Neshama Yisera, is that what it's about? I mean, give it a break. You know what I mean? If I was, looking with the Chassid, yeah. What you saying?
No, assuming that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, I'll be right back, Moshe. I just want, yeah.
It's not, then we can just why.
When you say Yavar Val Yehorig, what do we, what?
The guy comes in.
Yehorig Val Yavar, what are we talking about? You're talking about Kiddush Hashem. We'll get to that on Daf Ayin Daled. But what do you mean Yehorig Val Yavar? What? I lost you here, Harry. What do you? Yeah. He's going to kill you.
So why?
I can promise you, he'll kill you if you will confront him.
So
right?
why is there a question? Why wouldn't so? Of course he can do it.
That's exactly the question.
Question.
That's my question, AJ. That's exactly what I'm asking.
No, because maybe there's a degree of things of Shabbos that are kind of things of someone will be married.
Touch me at time. Do me a favor. You know what? Go take Psych 101, and then we'll come back and we'll debate it. When I'm asking you, Rabosai, and I think Ellie was onto something hot, could there be another way of approaching this whole sugya of Chazaka, Adam Mamid, Ein Adam Mamid, Atzma Lamona? A whole different approach. It's not a psychology. Can you offer an alternative?
You're willing not to break Shabbos your husband.
Oh, breaking Shabbos, I like that, Elliot. What were you saying? Well, no, you started a sentence. I like the way you started. Can he defend his property? You said something like that, right? Oh, that changes the whole thing. We're not asking, will he defend his property? We're asking, can he defend his property? And what's the issue about defending your property on Shabbos?
We call it Shabbos.
Kill Shabbos, you're gonna break Shabbos. I like that word, break Shabbos, break the Shabbos.
Well, if you can't put out.
You know, it's Erev Pesach. So,
Like Kol Kislev.
you know,
Yeah. Like
they
what
say
did I
that the three matzahs, you know, are connected the three tefillos. One was established by Avraham Avinu, the other by Yitzchak, and the third is by Yaakov. So the middle matzah is connected who? Yitzchak. Which tefillah did Yitzchak establish? Mincha. This is a very important siman. Take a break for mincha. Right? You have to break the middle matzah. That's what we used to say in college, because I went to a secular college, and it's mincha time. So what do you do in a secular college? It's mincha time. In the winter, you know, in New York, you got like, you know, a very short amount of time if you're taking a course. So what I used to do is I used to go, you gentlemen are too young to remember this, but they used to have phone booths in America. Do anybody remember that? I used to lock myself in a phone booth and make it a long distance call up to Shemayim, and I daven mincha. The only problem is that after a while, if the phone is off the hook for too long, then the operator starts, you know, screaming at you. You know, they have a recorded message, and like people are passing by, like, what's with this Jewish guy? You know, that's locked up in a anyway.
Yeah, well,
So-
you mentioned Kol Kislev.
What could be another pshat in Chazak?
People won't be B'chal Shabbos and the sacred
Well,
property if there's a fire. So that's what you.
If you're saying people won't be Michal Shabbos, then you're all ganging up on me with psychological principles. I want to leave out psychology.
No, that's you're not allowed to say things. Again, the profaning comes about the fire, then you say things, but you know.
Correct, excellent. Whole Kisvei, a whole parak in Shabbos is about, you know, Chil Shabbos for the sake of saving your possessions. But the Chil Shabbos here, my friends, is going to probably be Ritzicha. Ritzicha, by the way, is one of the 39 malachos, and that's called the Tilas Neshama, or in the Mishnah it's called Shochet. Correct. So now we have a new issue on Shabbos, but that issue only becomes an issue if you transform Chazaka here from a psychological principle to a halachic principle. What would be the possibility of saying that Chazaka Ein Adam Mavid Atzal Mamono is a legal principle, not a psychological prediction of human behavior? Anybody? What do you say?
He's entitled to.
Excellent. In Hebrew, what's the word for entitled? What? No. Well, yeah, but maybe you could do better than that. I would call it a schus. Right? A schus. There are various types of schuyot in halacha, right? I have a schus, let's say, to be tovea someone. I have a schus to force you to come to Bezdin and take a shvuah. There are many different halachas of schus. One of the halachas of schus is that a person is allowed to defend his property. The entire parsha of BiMachteres is predicated on that schus, on the halachic rights that a person has to protect his property. But there's a HaBah that maybe those rights, if they come in conflict with what? With Chil Shabbos, maybe those rights are rescinded, are overridden. Correct. I have to rescind and repeal those rights. So I again, just to summarize what I'm suggesting here is that perhaps we can understand the sugya BiMachteres in a way that's different than the Ran, and we don't have to go into this whole psychological thing. And the Ran is saying, well, Rove, yeah, most people wish, and some people not, and with the BiMachteres, not all Ganovim, the whole, write a whole, essay here on the psychology of burglary. You know what I mean? Maybe Google it and find out. No. Maybe we could offer an alternative. We're not going into psychological issues. The halacha grants a right to a person. He's got a chazaka, meaning he seizes onto the rights to be ein adam mamed atzma, that I want to go all the way to protect my money. So he took the initiative to break into my house, therefore I have to give up on my money? I'm going to challenge him to a duel, death duel, and I might even kill him. And the Torah says I'm allowed to kill him. All because I have the right to protect my property. I wish there was a lawyer here who could help me out here. I'm just curious. Any lawyers here? One time, there's a guy named Akiva in Zion. Every time I say something, he tells me
Yeah,
what,
that's from Mrs.
what,
Castle.
what would be the legal, he's a lawyer, so he tells you what would be the legal, counterpart in secular law. I wonder if there's a legal counterpart
There is.
here in
called a
secular law.
The castle rule.
The man's home is his castle.
Ah.
It's a British tradition that you can't.
Wow, how'd you find that? I'm impressed.
Castle.
Is.
Again, I don't need a pat on the back from British law, by the way, but it's very nice if you can find a parallel in secular law.
The castle doctrine.
The castle doctrine.
It's a legal doctrine that designates a person's abode or any legally occupied place as a place. As a place in which that person has protections and immunities permitting one in certain circumstances to use force up to and including deadly force to defend oneself against an intruder, free from legal prosecution.
Illy flood. You know what I would say? They stole it from us, but anyway. Would be the first time.
No, but wait a
He's
second.
in refugee.
I'm telling you, take that and send it to me because that is a formulation of this sugi above BiMachteres. Yeah,
Technically speaking, is it because the person has a right? He's allowed to kill him because he has a right to protect his property?
Exactly.
Or he has a right to kill him because the BiMachteres is prepared to kill him.
You're right.
So it's not a
You're right.
din in property per se, it seems to me, but rather because the kavanah of the BiMachteres is, I'm willing to kill him because
No, I'm
rightly
just-
or wrongly, the
Moshe, what I'm
psychological
asking
reality is gonna
let's
kill me.
say theoretically, we didn't have this
Castle doctrine.
castle doctrine. Let's say the halacha would say, you know what? You want to defend your property ad kedei kach to the point in which you're going to take someone's life? You know, we say, "V'ahavtas Hashem Elokech b'chol me'odecha," right? You think that property is more important than life? Okay, look, I'm not saying the BiMachteres is a tzaddik. You know, he deserves certainly to be flayed publicly. But that doesn't mean that you're going to defend your property to the extent in which you're going to challenge him with a gun and knock his block off because you want to defend your property.
But
That's a
maybe-
chiddush of chazaka, which I think Rava is being machadish, and that's what gets the ball rolling. You're right, Moshe. Afterwards, we get to stage number 2. A man has a right to defend his property. Now we go through the whole story and the BiMachteres, etc., etc. But I'm just saying, if you don't have that initial principle, then maybe the whole story of BiMachteres would be completely ripped out of the Torah.
So the assumption of the argument is chazaka is a schus.
Exactly.
But maybe chazaka is just the Torah is saying this is the way people are. It's not a
Okay, I'm
schus.
not
They shouldn't be that way.
I'll say again, I
They,
don't
they
have
shouldn't
any
be that way.
agenda
There's
here.
no heter.
There's no kfiyat datit in this
If I
class.
asked a Rav,
If you feel that you want to go with, with just the Ran, the Ran is a good guy. I mean, Rabbeinu Nisim, you heard of him, right? Of Gerona, maybe 6-7 centuries ago. Where was he? Yeah,
the Rambam.
and you should. Well, he was a Talmud of a Talmud of the Rambam. But you should know that in Hebrew University, in the National Library, I don't know if you ever saw it, they put on exhibit the Ran Sefer Torah. We have a Sefer Torah that was written by the Ran. When I saw it, like my eyes popped out. I've been learning my Ran, Anyway, so that's number 1. But now we're going to take a look at Rav.
Okay.
If you think that the sugi we learned until now is challenging, forget it.
Hey, can I just-
That's bupkis. That's simple compared to the next sugi of Rav.
What's happening that you're allowed to kill to protect your property? You can't do the Chol Shabbos to protect your property?
Because
I'll tell you why. Because
there's no-
killing someone has an element of guilt, meaning at some point the BiMachteres is called a rodef. But to put yourself into a situation where you're going to kill a rodef on Shabbos and violate the Shabbos, that's basically that. For that, I need a special review in the post. Are you with me? Because again, this man initiated the whole thing, as we saw in the Ran, and he doesn't deserve any mercy. But on the other hand, we're only killing him because of that schus.
Shabbos does, meaning Shabbos deserves,
That Shabbos also deserves to be taken into account. You don't want to break the Shabbos. Just-
Right.
Again, at the end of the day, this whole story of BiMachteres is because of a man's rights to protect his property. Do you see what I'm saying?
Listen, if it's
It's the Didi Mominus that generates the soul power.
if it's a schus, then why Ava Rabbein is? I mean, I would not. If it's just an Indian of protecting my property and it's a schus,
No, again,
then
I'm
Ava
saying
Rabbein
as
should
a
also like to
result
kill my
that
father.
schus is going to be eroded. And that means that we know that this Baal Habayis is going to threaten the life of.
So it's not because of protecting the property, it's because of
No,
self-protection.
you have to, again, listen carefully. What I'm saying is that the parsha of BiMachteres would not begin, it would not get off the ground. You couldn't launch it in Cape Canaveral unless you assume a schus mama. The entire structure of BiMachteres was suggesting, again, you don't have to accept it, that no one's forcing you, is predicated on a right, which we saw appears in other legal systems, to protect your property. That's all I'm saying. But that changes the picture from A to Z. Why? Because if it's all based on protecting your property, then there may be situations in which the Torah says, you know what? Tivater. Don't protect your property. Because it's not only the life of the rodeh for the BiMachteres that's involved over here. For that, I wouldn't have any mercy. Protect your property. But when it comes to a head-on collision with Shabbos, and now you can be Machal Shabbos, which is basically a Chiv Skila, you follow what I mean? Again, I'm not saying he'd be Chiv Skila, but close to it, then I don't know. How far is the Torah going to go with the rights of a person to protect his property? I would ask, I don't know if you could ask Google, but what's it called again? Castle
Doctrine.
Doctrine. Ask the Castle Doctrine if it applies to allow you to blow up an airplane to save your own possessions. Again, you follow what I'm saying? It's can you kill an innocent person? There got to be limits to the Castle Doctrine.
Castle Doctrine does not allow you to do anything illegal inside your own
Right.
house. It doesn't.
Right, you can kill the rodeh, but you can't kill somebody else. And now the Christians give you Machal Shabbos.
It's not that like a person wants to protect his possessions, and for that reason, he kind of knows that he might even, stand against him like a much. And physically, the Ganav is like comes ready to kill in case he has to. It's not saying like you're allowed. It's not saying that like we know that people. The Torah's giving you heter to like kill the Ganav, not necessarily to protect possessions. The Torah gives you heter to kill the Ganav because since he knows that you're not going to give up your possession freely and you're going to struggle against them, he's coming prepared to kill you.
So we're saying the same thing. The word heter that you're using, David used it before. In my lexicon, is called the schus mama. You want to call it a heter? Call it a heter. But the basic conclusion is identical, whether you call it a heter or call it a schus, meaning Shabbos might be a problem if the Torah is giving you a heter to go ahead and protect your property, to go ahead and challenge the road. If the Torah is giving you that heter, maybe there are limits to that heter. But if you're going with the Ran, that there's a psychological prediction of what a man is going to do, I find it very hard to believe, although you can argue with me, that the psychology is going to change on Shabbos. The man is about to steal my life's possessions. I worked for 100 years. Imagine you collected, I happen to be a passionate fan of art. I love art. So imagine for 100 years, the man has collected what you could call a small museum. And now somebody's breaking in. So psychologically, we could be, no, it's Shabbos. I'm not going to protect my possessions on Shabbos. That doesn't sound right to me. Let's go on. Okay, Rebbe, I didn't mean that the whole Shia should be dedicated to this point. We still have a few minutes, right? Although I think it's a valid point. Again, if you'll think it over, you might actually agree with me. Maybe. And if you don't, that's your right. Did I ever tell you the story? My brother, Hananya, I don't know if any of you know him. Yeah, so Hananya came from Kfar Hasidim, which is the yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. After he learned in Eretz Yisrael, Baltimore, he came to YU. My father took him straight from the ship, in those days, took him straight from the boat to YU. To not pass go, because he knew that coming from those yeshivas, Anyway, so he went into a Baron Soloveitchik shir. And my brother is a very outspoken kind of guy. So he likes to fight. And it was a small group. I think he told me there were 14 guys in the shir. And like almost every day, Rabbi Aaron would come in and say a shtickle Torah, and my brother would start arguing with him. So one day, the whole Shia courted Hananiah Burzon and said to him, "This is a gadol b'Yisrael. How are you doing such a thing?" So my brother turned white and everything. He went over to Rav Aaron the next day to ask him for mechila, if he fought against him in Shia. Listen to this. Rav Aaron said to him, "When I come into Shia, you assume that everything I tell you is sheker v'chazak until I can prove to you that it's emes." Now, I'm never going to say that because I'll be in deep trouble if I say that. All right, can we go on for the few minutes that we have? I want to see another round, but first we have to go through the Gemara of Rav. Omar Rav, right? So we go back now to Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. HaBah BiMachteres v'natal kelim v'yatza potter. Is this not the wildest thing you heard in your life? I mean, again, if he broke kelim, we're talking about tashlumei mama. Okay, as I said before, I'm not exactly sure how you define and classify tashlumei mama. I have a raya that tashlumei mama, that the nezikin is b'toras onshin. Again, I'm going to say it very quickly because it's an hour's discussion, but there's a Mishnah Bava Kama that says that hasoref es gedisho shel chaver b'Shabbos potter. And the Meiri says, in the name of the Chachmei Provence, that Kimle b'Ramine only applies when you have a chiyuv misa and a chiyuv mammon b'toras onshin. But if, for example, while a person engenders a chiyuv misa, he steals something and he's holding on to something, or he borrows money, then he has to return that money. It's not his. So from the fact that a madlik gedisha shel chaver b'Shabbos is potter, mishum shemischayev b'nafsho, I believe it's in Perek HaKodesh, if I remember correctly, that proves that tashlumei nezikin is an onesh, according to the Miri in the name of the Chachmei Provence. And that onesh cannot be imposed upon a person who is chayev misa at the same moment when he lights, the fire and destroys him. But all that would be true in Rava's frame of reference, because Rava is talking about shiber es hakelim. And the question is, can we hold the BiMachteres liable for compensation and sue him in a court of law? Can the owner of the house sue him for breaking his kelim? He broke his vase, he broke his this, that, and the other. But Rav is saying it's a horse of another color. Rav is saying, not alas kelim. Where are these kelim? In his hand. They're very much alive and well. They're intact. They're be'en. Potter. Potter means that there's no veheshivs like Zela Shagazal.
So any gana, I always keep thinking, I've been thinking this for years, okay?
Yeah.
Any gana can basically say, I endangered my life,
And that's it. I'll take you.
and I don't have to pay it back anymore.
That's right. I'll take your Monet
Yeah.
painting, that's worth $14 million in auction, and I'm not going to return it to you. Sin pays. Look that up. I think that's also a British principle. Just kidding. He's a Chotei Niska. Now, Rav has to somehow mumble a few words to explain what he's saying and why it's so. B'damim kaninu. That's my phone problem. B'damim kaninu. Literal translation, he was kone the kelim b'damim. Whoa, I know a lot. I could give you a whole long list of kinyan. A kinyan Masechet, and a kinyan HaBah, and a kinyan Karka, and a kinyan Metaltal, and a kinyan Shtar, and a kinyan Kesef. I never in my life heard of a kinyan Damim. He, so to speak, he acquired ownership over the kelim that he stole because he put his life into danger. The Ran is going to work overtime to try to explain what this means. So at least in the next few minutes that we have, let's give a shot at the Ran.
Rashi says, however, the chayev misa b'lekichasan.
Right. The chayev misa, but what does that have to do with Rav's kinyan? So if you take a look in the Ran, it's a pretty long piece in the Ran, but we'll try to at least highlight some of his points. Where's the page with the run on it? Oh,
Is that also in our phones?
Yeah, it's on the phone.
yeah, yeah.
The second paragraph.
Okay. Sfir leila Rav, dechihechi dim shiber asakelu BiMachteres potu di eno de beis umishalem hachinami im notal asakelim v'olichon lebeso v'heim bebeso potu. And basically, he doesn't have to return the kelim, right? V'hainu dekama b'dobi koninim, klomar shebeis shenotlan zacha b'hen v'zacha b'hen nischayev b'nafsho. Okay, no one can deny that. You know, the moment that he stole those kelim, he was in the Machteres, and he was chayev misa as a rodek, and therefore he's part to be tashlumin liolam, which I understand that he's part of tashlumin. We're not talking about tashlumin here. This is not compensation.
Shivas Akizela.
This is ve'eshiv sagzela. Liolam, he doesn't have to give it back for the rest of eternity. Shemishas Gneva zacha b'hen. At the moment of Gneva, we give him a kinyan. You hear this? A ganav could acquire ownership on the property that he steals. Why? Because he's the Nischai B'nafsh. We're going to grant him a kinyan. You can be koneh something that belongs to someone else, and in this case, it belongs to the Baal Bayis from whom you're stealing it. Why? Because you're Nischai B'nafsh. And Rav, as we'll soon see, says, Mistabra Milsa de Rav Sheshibe. I can explain and accept the principle of Rav of Nischaya B'nafsho, therefore he's part of the case of Shiber, where he breaks the Kelim. Klomer Sheshavron Aganu, BiMachteres. Hey, B'shogi, hey, B'mezid, they know the Mesa B'shalim. I will not ala Kelim, hey, B'shuso, Lo Zocha Ben Aganu, L'chayv Lach Ziron. Shafal Pishal Shasa Geneva Eino Chai B'Tashlumin. Okay, that's Tashlumin. Dahi Shait Chai B'Nafsho Avi. Mikomakom. Now forget about Tashlumin. I'm just returning that which is his to its proper owner. Achshav Akelim in Beis Haganav. Okay, fine. They're in the Beis Haganav. So what? Sheinim is Chayav B'hem, and he's no longer Chayav. By the way, you know this. Just the basics here. Once the BiMachteres leaves the Machteres, yesh lo dam. If somebody kills him afterwards, the Baal Bayis has revenge. He's chayav bisa for that. He's a rotzeah. So he's no longer chayav bisa, this kind of, once he steps out of the bayis of the house that he burglarized. Is hech yizke b'mamar shel zeh? How can it possibly be that he was zocha in that moment? And now the Ran is going to try to make sense out of this based on the next piece of Gemara, which is Rabbah. Okay, we didn't get that. We didn't get to that yet.
Sounds like there's a one b'shchakir on what the Heshiv Zagzila Shagol means. Is it Tashlumin or is it Hashara? Yeah, is that what he's getting at? I'm jumping the gun.
No, again, you might be right there, but if you ask me, I would say it's a chiyuv hashava. The Heshiv Zagzila.
That's right.
And no, but even Rav is not denying that this Heshiv Zagzila. He's just saying that he was koneh, meaning a ganav doesn't have to return something. Well, let me say it the other way around. Why does a ganav have to return it? The Torah says v'heshiv is because it belongs to the digna. But if the ganav acquires ownership, as strange as it sounds, then he doesn't have to return it. There's no v'heshiv like sale. I'm not giving you back that which is yours. You'd be asking me to give back that which is mine because the ganav was koneh. That's what Rav says. The ganav is koneh.
This here, is not the same as other Yisrael. The other cases are where the person is over an Aveira that has an Onesh, whatever the Onesh is, here, the Ganav doesn't have an ownership of Mita. The Balabai is allowed to kill him because as soon as the Ganav would kill him, the Balabai could get the thing back without killing him.
So you're questioning even Rabbah. You're saying even in Shibras HaKelim, maybe there should be no din of Kiblei with the Rabbah.
Yes, because
Yeah.
it's not the same thing. It's not Chayav and Beg, there's no like Chiyuv Misa. He put himself to risk, right? So if somebody does something dangerous, like, if I still forget about, still coming in my parrot, that, I run across the major highway to get to the other side, steal something, and I run back across the major highway and dodge all the cars and not get killed. Well, I put myself at risk of being killed, at the time I now also look at, like, you're opening us up to.
That what that even in that what are you asking that
What I'm
even in
trying
that
to say
case
is-
maybe he should be Kona the Gneva? You said?
Why is it Zoka? Because he put himself in danger?
But you have to go a step further. It's not just that he put himself in danger, but he's mischayev b'nafsho, ain't lo domin. Now we're gonna have a whole sugya later. For example, in the case of a rodef who's a katan.
Mischayev b'nafsho then means, if it's a sentence, means more than simply putting in danger, but you're in a halachic state where somebody who is allowed to kill you, as
Right.
it were.
And might even be obligated to kill you in certain
So
cases.
somebody
we have
running
to see.
across the road
So
is
what's the,
one
like, for
thing.
example, we're gonna have a sugya later of katan. Katan or rodef acher chaver. Can we kill the katan? And the Gemara is gonna have a svara to say we can't kill the katan. Why? Because he's not chayav misa. What do you mean he's not chayav misa? Who cares? He's a rodef. But the answer is the whole halach of rodef is meant to generate a chiyuv misa. And that chiyuv misa translates into kim levi the Rabbi. Now I want to point out something in Rashi because I see we're running out of time, and maybe we'll do the Ran, more benachas, so we're not pressured. But there is a Rashi here. Just 1 second. Second.
Show command. Chayev Misa.
You see Rashi on the Mishnah. Dibra Maskal Ein Lo Domin. Right, the Mishnah says that a BiMachteres Ein Lo Domim, which I said is 99 out of 100 cases, is potter. He doesn't have to pay for Shviras HaChavos. So Rashi says the following. Kigon, Shar Kol Odom, meaning anyone other than the father. We're skipping the previous Rashi where Rashi gives us an insight about the father. Fine. Shenitan Rishus Lebal Bayis Lahorgo. I'm not sure if that Rashi is mashma like what I suggested. I don't know. Hotami L'Shalim. Why? The Chiv Misa. You hear this from both sides. Chiv Misa. V'chiv tashlumin boim ke'echad. Now wait a second. What do you mean chiv misa? He's alive and well. I mean, he got out of the BiMachteres. He's not dead. We're going to kill him after he goes out of the BiMachteres. That's ridiculous.
Killing him is as if the court killed someone who was Chayev Misa.
But that's not what it says here. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, "V'afal pisha nitzal." Those words, afal pisha nitzal, are a kasha. Rashi's asking a kasha here. Like a vimtomar nitzal. He got out of there. No one killed him. Now it's yesh lo dam. Rashi says, potem in tashlumin. Why? Listen to this. By the way, this is one of the rare occasions, and it's a red light goes off when you see Rashi quoting another sugya. You understand when Rashi quotes another sugya that we're not dealing with something simple. That apparently our sugya would not supply the right answers or the sufficient answers to our questions. And the answer to that question and the question that we're asking is, you can't call him Kimlev the Rabbi and Mischai B'Nafsho when he got out alive, when he's out of the Machteres. He's no longer in that situation. And Rashi's answer to that question is going to be based on a sugya in Ksubis, in Perkei Lunaris. The Kaimelon, Chayve Misa Shogigin, Kigon Shalo Hisru Bahen, Ein Mishalmim Momon. She'ima Misa, Ein Mishalmim Momon Ima Misa, Shema Misa, Afal Pishay Nerogin. What is going on in this Rashi? Rashi is bothered by a question. His question is that we're not going to kill this BiMachteres because we're suing him in a court of law. He's alive and well on the other side of the witness stand, and he's being sued for damaging Caleb. Well, he's alive and well. He's not Nerag. And Rashi says, if that be the case, then he should be paying damages. No, Rashi answers no. Why? Because we have a suging ksuv, it's called Chayve Misa Shogigin. What does that mean? That means, there was no asra. It means that a person was unaware of the avera. He did the avera, which had he been aware and he was deliberate, he was amazed and intentionally chayv misa, chayv kares, he doesn't pay. He's parted from all moment. What does that have to do with anything?
It's the same thing.
Well,
He did a capital avera, but he wasn't guilty for it.
Again, why does Rashi need the Gemara Ksuv? Just simply say Kimlev Ramine. You're telling me that the time that he was guilty of a capital crime, he also incurred a chiyuv mammon. We have a principle called Kimlev Ramine. But why does Rashi have to introduce Chayve Misa Shogin? I don't know anything about Ksuvs. I don't know anything about Chayve Misa Shogin. Well, what did?
If he's not Chayav Misa, now the question is, what do you do about the Tashlumin? The Kimlev Ramine is only when he's Chayav Misa. If he's not Chayav Misa because of a technicality, because of Asra, or because the guy was able to get out of the BiMachteres. So what do you do about the Tashlumin? You still say that he's part of the Tashlumin? Rashi says you see them not so good. The answer is yes.
But again, what was Rashi's HaBah mina? Rashi's HaBah mina was that if at the time that he incurred the chiyuv mammon, he was subject to a chiyuv misa, right? Ein lo damim, and he's a rodef and so forth and so on, and we're going to apply the principle of Kimlev Ramine. Well, then what happens later on? Later on, well, he happened to survive it, so therefore, all of a sudden, we're going to say L'mafreya that he's chayav mammon. I mean, what does Rashi need chayav misa shogin? Rashi has to take a stand on the following issue: what happens if you have a Kimlev the Rabbi situation, but guess what? He survived. We didn't get to kill him. So what are we going to do? Rashi says, "But forget it. There's no Kimlev the Rabbi." Unless I have a Gemara Ksubs. Well, why should there not be a din of Kimlev the Rabbi in it? He's Chayav Misa and he's Chayav Tashlumin at the very same time. Well, I need the sugi of Chayav Misa Shogin for this. Excellent. You don't have to come to Shira. This is like really embarrassing. He's 1,000% right. More than 1,000%. The HaBah of Rashi is that Kimlev the Rabbi is halach in Bezdin. And the Torah enjoins Bezdin and ties the hands of Bezdin from implementing two punishments. One is more chomer and the other is less chomer. And according to that HaBah, when the BiMachteres stands in front of the Bezdin because the victim is suing him for destroying his kalim, at that point, Bezdin will only have to punish him with one onesh, namely what? Write the check. He's no longer chayav misa. So Rashi thinks in that case we cannot apply the principle of Kimlev the Rabbi, because Kimlev the Rabbi is halach in what? In Bezdin. That Bezdin's hands are tied. They cannot impose what? Two onshim simultaneously. Choose one, and they'd have to take the more chomer. Here we don't have to choose. Why? Because he's alive and well. We're not killing him. He's not going to be put to death. Bezdin doesn't have to take him out to the Beis HaSkila. So let him pay. And for Rashi name, Kimlev the Rabbi is not a din in Bezdin. It's a ptur. It's a separate halach of a ptur that if within one action you incurred a chiyuv misa, and at the same time, simultaneously, you incurred a chiyuv mammon, the chiyuv misa knocks off the chiyuv mammon. And it has nothing to do with Bezdin. Says Rashi, I'll prove it to you. Because Chayv Misa Shogeg and Bezdin is not going to punish him, and yet he's Potter. His Vaistois, we see very clearly that Kim Lev and Ramine is not a din that addresses Bezdin. It's a din in the Guf HaChiyuv. You have one Maisa that generated two Chiyuvim, and there's a Ptur. The Chiyuv, the Groisa Chiyuv patters up the Kleiner Chiyuv. The greater Chiyuv just knocks off the lower Chiyuv. Do I understand why? Basically, when I get up to heaven, I'll ask the man with the big G on his sweatshirt to explain it to me. But right now, I don't understand it. It's Xeris HaKosim. Kimlei with the Ramni there. And Kimlei Ramni is a poter. Oh, if it's a poter, then we have nothing to do with Bezdin. And if it has nothing to do with Bezdin, then the halacha is he was poter when he broke the kalim. And if he's poter when he broke the kalim, then we're not going to be machayev him retroactively because Kimlei with Ramni generates a ptur. And I'll prove it to you from the case of Chayv Misa Shogeg. Okay, then we're both sides. I guess we. Yeah. So we'll believe that we'll do the second round.
The problem is 30 years ago, the luck of Rashi says it's not like that. A little hard. They made an actual kanan. It doesn't say putter, right? They made an actual kanan. What is kanan? He bought it. He bought it. It's his.
I don't know which Rashi.
It doesn't sound like this.
But you're in Rashi on the Mishnah?
No, the Rashi and the Gemara later on.
Oh, you're on Ra. Okay, I didn't know you're going back to previous discussion. Okay, so let's go look at Rav. So what's the Dibra Master of Rashi?
The Damim Kanin.
The Dom Kanin. 1 second. How many long? If you don't want, because I haven't seen my wife today. I haven't eaten supper today.
It's right where the right where the Torah or Shalom.
The Torah or Shalom.
The Torah Shas, the Torah Shalom.
Yeah. But I have B'dam Kanin. B'dmei Nafsho Kanan. I have no clue what Rashi's saying, but what bothers you about this Rashi?
Because according to what you're saying is that because of the being of criminal driving day, so there's a tour
right
on the dummy, on the caliph that he has.
Right.
But that's not what Rashi's saying. Rashi's saying is that he purchased it.
No, again,
through the main nafsha.
1 second.
If it was a tour, he would.
Eli, I'm guilty here. I'm guilty of a very serious violation of the laws of pedagogy. When I was talking about Kimle and Ramine, I wasn't talking about Rav. I'm talking about Shibur Sakelim. I was discussing the Rashi on the Mishnah in the case of Shibur Sakelim. And Rashi says that the only way I can understand why he doesn't pay for the kalim that he broke is based on the Gemara and Ksubis of Chayv Misa Shogeg. Then we have a sugi of Rav. Rav is talking about a case where he stole the object, he stole the kalim, and they're be'en, not long. He's got them in his hands. So Rashi says he was kona it b'damin, which is exactly what Rav says. We don't understand. We don't have a clue what that means. We're hoping that the Ran will open our eyes. But again, that has nothing to, you see, pedagogically, what happened was, and I apologize to you, Eli, what I did was I saw we were running low on time. So I went back to a different sugya. There are two different sugyas here. There's one sugya of Shibur Sakelim, and there's another sugya of Natal Sakelim. Whatever we said today in Rashi on the Mishnah was about Shibur Sakelim. You're showing me a Rashi about Natal Sakelim. You know what? I have no clue why Natalas a Kalim, he doesn't pay. He doesn't have to return the Kalim. I just know that somehow we made a kinyan on the Kalim. We're not sure exactly how that operates and what is the mechanics of us making a kinyan on the Kalim. That has nothing to do with Kim Levi the Rabbanine. Kim Levi the Rabbanine I was discussing, is it a din in Bezdin or is it a separate Ptur? And that's relevant to the case of Shibur. Okay then? Adkan.
Okay.
Took me a half hour to get here from crazy traffic, and they took me through the entire frat, and the ways. And at first I said, "Ways, guys, I don't like this ways, guys. You have to travel through all, and you go through a frat. Every step you take in the car is a bump, and you jump in the plane." But at the end, when I saw what kind of traffic there was, I thanked Waze for taking me through the entire frat. From the time that I got out of the front, it took me 20 minutes to get.
Terrible.
Why is this? There's certain times I come and what's like,
Yeah.
Has to
Well,
do with
sometimes
terrorism
it's so
or what?
smooth.
no,
Sometimes it's no time, sometimes you have to wait a half, it's a
go
half hour.
figure it out.
All right.
Well, we'll try to hire a helicopter.
I'm glad somebody's getting pretty.
Right,
That's
thank you very
good.
much. Thank you, son.